ogień srebrony skłonę. Pomógł. Tak, pomógł.
Battle for Earth begins.
Anything else that might get in the way of our ideal must be destroyed immediately.
The ultimate enemy has arrived. Their single purpose: destroy our world.
I'm sure God would understand the steps we're taking.
Those who oppose them, die.
Let me repeat that. If this mission fails, if we are unsuccessful, we have no future.
Isn't it about time that people realize the ones posing the most threat are none other than yourselves?
What this is war.
Now, these pirates will shake the foundations of the Alliance and change the course of history. If they can stay alive,
Those Gundam pilots are desperate. They'll battle even if it means forfeiting their lives. Mission accepted. Of course not.
Just like it is in the stars, there are bright ones, there are those that are dim.
both sides prepare for the final battle. Suit up.
The worst thing that can ever come from staying with normal people.
Be very careful.
Mankind has reached the stars.
There has to be some form of punishment.
Love the women that make plastic. Those are the ones that love me. Get set! Go. But I'm surging with women. Hillary Clinton's a bigot. He would not be my first choice, that I can tell.
You think you'll be in jail?
Would I approve waterboarding? You bet your ass I approve.
And I'd bring back a hell of a lot worse than waterboarding.
Go on to Mammon. This is the dream!
where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay? It's like incredible.
I guarantee you there's no problem.
I think we should take a drug test prior to the I never heard that one before.
Circuitry and metal, cold and emotionless, carry out tasks without conscience. Robots, thousands, programmed for destruction. March towards the future is coming. Man's greatest inventions, making the impossible possible, are no longer under our control.
Technological strength will just become a threat to the Earth.
This new breed of technology makes humanity obsolete. Robots, thinking, acting on their own, begin their march toward domination. These machines, built by man, serve no one. The robots among us, watching, waiting, calculate their new world order. Their time is coming. They cannot be stopped.
Attention, strange weapons are emerging. Attention, strange weapons are emerging.
With perfect weapons and superior intelligence, robots rule this planet. Let the fall of mankind give way to a new age.
This little mudball of man doomed anyway.
Century 0079. The one-year war rages on. Space droids against Earth dwellers.
I'm gonna try to see our forces right off the Earth.
Zeke against Faye.
Not bad for a Betty, but I bet you're not ready for this.
As both sides prepare for the final battle.
Run for it!
The secret love of two enemies may be mankind's only hope for peace. They're no better than they are. Begin.
There are endless possibilities stretched out before you.
Trust in your own power.
Whatever happens from now on, you stand firm and face your destiny without fear, but with courage.
What awaits him down the path, he will then have to choose.
No one's gonna give you a map. You've gotta walk your own path.
The children leave their homes in search of this quest.
What is thy desire?
As they search, they are always asking questions. What's out there? What's waiting for you?
Why was I made? Who made me? And what did they make me for?
You gonna go up into space with your old man or not? Maybe I'll never get over this. I've lived my life following my dreams, and I don't have any regrets.
You're gonna just keep running away?
Just keep running away? I'm not running.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Believe in yourself and create your own destiny. Don't fear failure.
Let him cook. Let him cook now. Let him cook. I said let him cook.
Excuse me, Rob. You're excused. And that's your bro.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Controlled Substance. I'm your host, Orphan. Oh, whoa. Had a great Game Seller show today. Ryan and I were talking with the Parallel guys, Kalos and Mr. Gone, talking about the brand new avatars that are coming out. Everyone's so excited about. Turn this music down for just a sec. But we're on to a little bit of a different topic right now for our unhinged political stream. That being Mr. Chris Langan himself. I've been watching some Chris Langan content in the past few days, and for those of you that aren't familiar with Chris, he is the smartest person in the world. Allegedly has a higher IQ than Einstein at, I think he's around 200, 195 to 200. Einstein was like around 160, I believe, ish. IQ tests get a little squirrely on the extrema. For those of you that know anything about IQ, it's like if you get too low or too high, it's difficult to put an exact metric on that because you're at the dovetails. But that completely aside, like, Chris Langan is verifiably one of the smartest people on the planet, and you'll be able to hear that when we look at some of his clips. What I wanted to talk about is I watched an entire 4-hour interview with him. He was talking about his CTMU, which is his theory of the entire universe. He has a model that metaphysically and physically proves the entire universe. It's called a theory of everything by most people, and there's a few different versions of it. Eric Weinstein has one. You may have heard him talk about it vaguely, but none of them are as cohesive or as holistic as, from my limited knowledge, what I think Chris Langan's is. And you can tell by the way that he incorporates spirituality into his physical model of the world, or like metaphysical model of the world, right? So I watched this interview with him. He was kind of explaining. I was trying to follow along where I could. It's pretty dense stuff. It requires a lot of unpacking, as you would assume someone trying to describe the entirety of reality would. You would assume that'd be a little complicated. And it did not disappoint. But that being said, it's incredibly interesting. And there was one question at the very end that the interviewer was trying to ask him. He said, basically, if you had to do your life over again, what would you focus on? And his response was interesting, and I think illuminating, particularly as we come into the time where money is harder to come by, and there's a lot of moral wrongs going on. And his interpretation, his framing, and his advice is all pretty interesting stuff. So I think that's worth taking a dive into. First things first, I want to thank you all for being here. And I also want to show you a quick video. I don't know when this was released. It was a while ago. 2017. This is a little short news snippet, about 3 minutes, on who Chris Langan is, to give you a little background. So let's take a dive into this and let's see if we can get a little context here.
1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go.
Do you believe in God? Many of the 7 billion people on planet Earth would say yes. But for one Heartland man, faith is not good enough. Chris Langan wants proof, and says he's found it. He's a blue-collar, former city dweller who spent 25 years as a bouncer in the nightclubs of New York.
They don't ask you what your IQ is. They don't ask you how smart you are.
None of Langan's life looks too out of the ordinary.
Part of it was, of course, finding a place to live where you had a certain amount of freedom.
But in addition to berry picker and farmer, Chris Langan is one of the smartest men in the world.
Part of it also was to, I guess, have a certain amount of privacy as well.
He is not a priest, a rabbi, or a prophet, but his arrival to the Princeton area was a pilgrimage. Langan is noted as one of the smartest minds in the world.
If you took the very best minds from the very best universities in the world, they wouldn't be able to put a dent in me or my theory.
He's not using ancient texts to prove God's existence, but metaphysics.
It includes physics and the natural sciences, but it also goes to a level above, a level on which you can actually talk about the entirety of science.
CTMU is the cognitive theoretic model of the universe. It's Langan's philosophical theory that he says proves God's existence.
The existence of God can be proven if God is properly defined in the first place.
He's dedicated to the idea that this theory should be pursued by mankind.
Every religion that actually has truth in it, that actually has logical integrity, can be interpreted in this overall framework.
He's not your conventional intellectual. In fact, he doesn't even have a college degree.
I'm pretty much an autodidact. I teach myself everything by necessity.
He's attempted a degree twice, but intellectual capital did not translate into financial capital.
I had no choice at that point but to drop out.
Shortly after he was discovered by Esquire magazine, he began the Mega Foundation.
This, I decided, would be a kind of an intelligence society, not an ordinary IQ society, but one with more variety in its way of identifying intelligence.
The Foundation aids programs that develop theories like Langan's CTMU.
This is something that we could change using the CTMU. We could create a world in which everyone of every religion has a common convergent ideology in which they can all agree.
His pilgrimage has led him to a quieter life, but it's the journey that could help change the world, revealing one of the biggest answers to mankind, the existence of God. Lewis Finley, KTVO News.
So there you have it. If you didn't catch that part, Chris Langan was a bodybuilder. And it's really fucking awesome. On the back of his book, like, this is the type of image that he puts. It's like him all like 80s jacked or here with his arms crossed with the space in the background. It's so good. It's so funny. And then here's a little bell curve for Chris Langan. Spike Jonze also did an interview with him not too long ago. Pretty interesting. So if you want to check it out, check him out. He's definitely worth looking into. For someone who's so smart, he is maligned by the mainstream intellectuals, primarily because he does take on some of these issues that are a bit anti-scientific. Or I wouldn't say anti-scientific, but he takes on issues in a more holistic realm. So he doesn't shy away from incorporating spirituality or incorporating God into his theories, into his scientific theories. And there's a surprising amount of low-quality images associated with him. 52, he was born in March 25th, 1952. He was speaking at 6 months. That's crazy. Check this out. Speaking at 6 months, 3 years he was listening to comics on the radio, then he followed with the paper version in his hand until he learned to read by himself. 5 years he asked his grandfather about the existence of God and was disappointed by the answers he got. Man, I don't know if you can see this very well. I'll just read it at the bottom here. At school, he could take a foreign language exam without having studied at all. With 2 or 3 minutes to leaf through the book was enough to approve with high grade. In early years of adolescence, while working as a day laborer, he began to read extensively on theoretical physics. He played Jimi Hendrix songs with the guitar with closed eyes, and they sounded the same at 15 years. At 16 years, he started to read Bertrand Russell. So this dude's a standout for sure. That is not a typical intelligence. All right. I want to dive into the specific clip that I wanted to talk about today. We'll go straight to the red pill scene for that. Yeah, the real Chuck Norris. He looks like Chuck Norris too, doesn't he? Maybe it's just the mustache. He's got a Chad energy too. He doesn't suffer fools lightly. If someone says something intentionally stupid or seemingly stupid to him, he doesn't handle it very well. And I can only imagine. I mean, that just makes sense from being this smart. So check this out. Let's dive into it right here.
God is reality, and reality is God. If you don't like God, you're sunk.
Okay, hold up.
Kicked out of houses when we were kids. We found ourselves in the street. I don't know where people get the idea that we're all privileged and we all have all these privileges.
This is the tail end of the last
Save it for
question.
somebody who actually got the privileges. We didn't.
He grew up very poor.
Anyway, if I had it to do all over again, I would meet with John Wheeler.
there are people who are watching this who are developing their own theories. And so it's almost like when I ask you, what would you have done differently? It's also couched in, well, what would you have done differently such that they can apply it? So when you say speak to John Wheeler, that's extremely specific. First, they can't apply it. Second of all, not everyone was invited. So given that, now, what is your answer? What would you have done differently? What would you advise your 30-year younger self to do or not to do?
Basically, I would be... you're kind of... Okay, I've already succeeded in finding what I wanted to find. All right, so basically what I would try to do is make sure that I was not distracted and taken off the track. All right, one thing that you must bear in mind if you are a young person who's trying to figure reality out is that you cannot serve God and Mammon. God is reality and reality is God. If you don't like God, you're sunk. You're not going to get a true theory of reality. You can learn a lot of math. You can learn how to kind of put things together and tack.
Okay, real quick, I wanted to find that because not everyone knows what Mammon is. So I pulled up the Wikipedia here. He said, you must serve either God or Mammon. Mammon basically is the superstructure of greed, material wealth, and, yeah, facts from the Gospel of John. Exactly. So he is a Christian, despite having a larger view that extends beyond Christianity. But he uses a lot of Christian teachings, a lot of Christian frameworks to talk because obviously that's a great framework to discuss some of these larger topics within. So he says you must serve either God or Mammon. In the New Testament of the Bible, it's commonly thought to mean money, material wealth, or any entity that promises wealth and is associated with greedy pursuit of gain. Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke both quote Jesus using the word in a phrase often rendered in English as you cannot serve both God and Mammon. So basically this is a sometimes deified superstructure of wealth, material pursuit, and ephemeral wealth. You know, it's just money, material goods, all that stuff. It's kind of an all-encompassing structure of that. So just wanted to clarify that a little bit. I'll take a step back here.
So basically what I would try to do is make sure that I was not distracted and taken off the track. All right. One thing that you must bear in mind if you are a young person who's trying to figure reality out is that you cannot serve God and Mammon. God is reality and reality is God. If you don't like God, you're sunk. You're not going to get a true theory of reality. You can learn a lot of math. You can learn how to kind of put things together and tack one mathematical theory onto another, but you're not really going to get to the identity of reality. And that's how we define the G-O-D. That's what I was telling you about, okay? Anyway, you can't serve the G-O-D and Mammon. You want to be a big shot? You want to go out and be a hedge fund manager? Go ahead and do it. But you can forget about your aspirations to reality theory. There are all kinds of people out there, elites, money bags of various kinds, who think, well, first of all, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out there and I'm going to make $1 billion. I'm going to make a lot of money. And then, armed with that money, I'm going to save the world. No, you're not, because you spent all your capital. It's hard to get money. Okay, it really does kind of knock you out. You've got to have the right connections. You've got to have the lucky breaks. If you immerse yourself in that goose chase, okay, if that's what you live for, by the time you get your money and you're sitting there and now you're a big billionaire and you're going to do this and you're going to do that, there's nothing left. All you can do is put on a show. This has been proven time and time and time again. You point me out a billionaire who's actually got some kind of big insight or some big idea about the nature of reality, and that's nonsense. Okay, anyway, go ahead, try it. You know of any billionaires that really have any good ideas about reality? Well, anyway, that's what I would remind myself of. Don't chase money, okay? There is a cost for that. People sell their soul for it. And that has a very literal interpretation in the CTNU. Okay, you're subscribing to a tell-on that is designed to get you money, and that tell-on now controls your thoughts. It's not going to let any distractions through by way of reality theory. You're not gonna be able to keep those things in mind anymore, because it's all about getting money, furthering the interests of the corporation, right? Not running afoul of corporate culture. All of these things are going to occupy your attention, and you're not going to be the big genius you thought you were going to be. All right? You make up your mind. You're either going to be a genius or you're going to be a moneybags. Now, most people, given that choice, will choose moneybags. All right? But don't turn on the TV and see, a billionaire who's saving the world and think that that's going to lead to anything for you, because it won't. Okay, if you sell your soul to Mammon, you are not going to be the big reality theoretic genius that you thought you were.
What if someone says, I want to be a philanthropist like Bill Gates?
So you think Bill's they think Bill's a philanthropist, do you?
Okay. Before we get into the the Bill Gates question, I thought that was, when I watched that the first time, I thought that was so funny, like how incredulous he is about Bill Gates being a philanthropist. He goes on to describe it a bit, but only normies would even think of Bill Gates as a philanthropist. As far as philanthropy in the truest sense of the word is even possible. But this answer, at the end of a 4-hour interview with the smartest man in the world, really brought it all together for me, and it really put a lens on some of the problems that we talk about all the time on this show. Daily Wire is what pops into my mind right off the bat. Mike Pence, any of these fake Republicans, these false Republicans, what they have done is they've convinced themselves, or like John Doyle's, there's way more examples than we would like to see of people who think like this out of either a misunderstanding or a short-sightedness for the big picture. And what I mean by that is exactly what Chris said. You can either serve God or Mammon. You don't have the time or the resources to be able to do both. And what most people do is they look and they're like, well, I want money, I want influence, I want comfortability. And they say, that will then, they cope themselves into saying, that will then allow me to become an important figure. It'll allow me to solve these problems that I see, because then I'll have the resources. But what you're doing when you start to serve Mammon is your entire life becomes the service of that. You can only serve one master. Jesus says this as well. You cannot serve more than one master. There's not enough time, there's not enough effort, and you are only one instantiation. You're only one human. You're only one person. You have to choose. There's something there. You can't have your cake and eat it too. And everyone knows this on a certain level. Yet the attraction of these material goods, it just has to be greed or stupidity, and either one is unhelpful. These things, they don't springboard you. They're separate paths, right? So think of it as a corridor with a left corridor and a right corridor, and somehow you think that going down the left corridor is going to get you further down the right corridor. You know what I mean? Like, because that really is how it works. You're building structures, and the structure on the left is wealth, and the structure on the right is godliness. And some people trick themselves into thinking that building the wealth structure higher and higher will allow them to build a bridge over to the God structure. But in reality, the God structure is still down at the ground. You haven't built that up enough. And you for sure haven't built it up to the equal level that you've built your wealth structure up. So these things are dichotomous. They're opposites. And so anyone who is fooling themselves in this way is, at the core of it, serving the devil. And that may sound, whenever people talk about the devil or evil, a lot of times it gets misconstrued just because of the shallow vision of what God and what the devil or what evil and what good is and are. But Chris has some really good insights that maybe we can dive into on another time, but he says that God is the structure. God is the whole. He is the closed loop at the top of the structure. He's the pinpoint, the thing that everything else generates from. And the devil, evil, is the antithesis of that. It is the chaos. It is the disorder of that structure. So evil is the antithesis of God. And so if that's the case, and God doesn't care about wealth and the devil does, when you are fooling yourself into thinking that more money equals more godliness or more capacity for godliness, you're just wrong. You're just misguided. And that dives into this next clip that I want to show you. It's a little Bible study from Chris Langan. What's up, Young? Good to see you, man. Had a great game seller earlier. I don't know if you caught much of that. I thought I saw a chat from you in there. But game seller popped off today. It was really fun. So good to see you, man. I hope you're doing well. All right, so check this out. It's Chris Langan, CTMU Bible Study, Paying Tax Unto Caesar. So this kind of helps illuminate what we're talking about. And this man needs a graphic designer.
Great. Now let's go. We have 2 more passes.
I wonder if he'll hire me to help him with graphic design. Because, like, he's got such good viewpoints and such good opinions, but, like, he's just clearly an intellectual more than an aesthete.
So just for this time, we'll go to Matthew 22:15.
This is all very important because we have to interpret all of the ideas to interpret Scripture in the CTMU. So
yes,
this is exactly what we're supposed to be doing.
Exactly. It's very important. And people have a lot of questions about this, and people are throwing scriptures all the time around without really having a good way to interpret them. And a lot of people really respond to those videos on the channel. Okay, so I'll read this. It's a little bit long, but I think I can get through it. Matthew 22, verse 15 to 22. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap him in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not? But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, you hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax. They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, whose image is this, and whose inscription? Caesar's, they replied. Then he said to them, so give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's. When they heard this, they were amazed, so they left him and went away.
Yeah, we've already discussed that in terms of money supply, and what.
That's Jesus BTFOing the Pharisees, by the way. Epic pone.
Coinage actually represents. See that the Pharisees were trying to entrap Jesus here in what would have been considered sedition. Okay, if the Romans had found out that Caesar said, don't pay the tax to Rome, the Romans would have come and arrested him and killed him on the spot. Okay, he challenged their authority, so they wanted to get rid of him. He challenged the authority of the Pharisees in particular, and they always wanted to get rid of him for that reason. The Pharisees, of course, were the people who actually, they were a little bit comparable to academics or lawyers or people that run things, do most of the intellectual work justifying the government. In our society, those were the Pharisees and Sadducees, scribes in ancient Hebrew society, okay? And if Jesus had said, no, don't pay your tax, this would have allowed them to arrest him on a mere tax challenge. See, a very trivial thing. And he wouldn't have been able to finish what he was doing had that happened. So he had no choice but to somehow deflect this entrapment, okay? Because if he had, banality would have triumphed over spiritual value to the detriment of both God and man. So he had to somehow get out of this trap.
So is he saying keep the material on a material level and keep God?
In a way, yes, but he's saying something he's saying something a little bit like he said to the money changers, the ones that he drove out of the temple with a whip. Okay? They had their own species of counterfeit spiritual money. Okay? The terminally confined telesis called money. Okay? He turned the table on the Pharisees here by, in effect, pointing out that just as money is fake telesis, just false value concretized and controlled by money monopolists, or as we call them, monopoly capitalists. Okay? Caesar was a counterfeit. He was essentially a counterfeit who might as well take back his false coinage and let God rule the true telic economy.
Yes.
Okay? In other words, Caesar, being a power, an earthly power, had basically taken telesis, taken true utility, divine utility, generic utility of God, and taken that and confined it to the terminal realm using coinage. Okay? He was counterfeiting telesis. That's what all these people are doing. We need money, there's to a certain extent, but money it's misused, it's badly abused, and most of the people that coin it and that use it misuse the hell out of it. Okay? Caesar was just one of those people. So essentially what Jesus was saying is, Caesar is a counterfeiter. Now take this fake money, take this fake utility that he has created and give it back to him and tell him to stick it up his butt. Okay? That's what Jesus did. He's not saying that taxation is good and you must pay your taxes. That is not what he was saying. He's saying the whole thing is a stinking scam. Okay? So you might as well just take their scam money and give it back to them. Okay? And tell them where to stick it. Okay? Because we don't need it and we can do without it.
Okay. Switch over to the white pill here. All right. Dude, I love hearing regular people or intelligent people just having an explanation of biblical stories, because we've gotten so out of context. It's so far from biblical context that when someone takes a story like this, most people know this story, and most people are like, they don't understand the. First of all, they can't contextualize it into modern day. Second of all, they can't understand like the real dynamics of what's going on. So the Pharisees are trying to entrap Jesus. They're trying to catch him in a problem where they know that he can't preach like that you need to respect Caesar and he's the true leader, so like respect him. So, but they also know that he can't say we don't pay your taxes because he'll get thrown in jail and that'll subvert him. You know, he'll be unable to finish his mission. So, just framing that within a modern day dilemma where someone's trying to tell you to not pay taxes, like based, backing you into your own morality. But then Jesus, with his 5-head intellect, just comes down and says, he's like, this shit's fake anyways. He's like, he just completely dismantles them and says like, hey, money's fake anyways, so yeah, give it to him. It doesn't matter. Completely avoiding the dilemma and saying at the same time, yes, pay your taxes, but at the same time, don't put importance on these taxes. Just so based, so awesome. But people, a lot of people, it's really hard to understand these things from a lens that is personal. It's the same reason why history becomes so boring sometimes, because you think about it as a bunch of people running around hundreds, thousands years ago and doing things that have no bearing on your day, your current day. This is why so many people think that we're post-history. They think, well, I hear these stories or these myths and fables, and these are great examples of all these things. I'm starting to ramble a bit, but the importance of these stories is these stories are as valuable today as they ever have been. The only difference is that we've lost the keys to decode these things. And so this is why I think that people like Jonathan Peugeot and Chris Langan and anyone else who is trying to recontextualize these morals, recontextualize these stories into a way that makes sense for a modern man, It's so, so important. Right. The greater picture here is, this is another example, a biblical example, and with the nice conduit of Chris Langan here, to say that you cannot serve the world and serve God at the same time. And this is very, very important, because politically, we see people like John Doyle, we see the Daily Wire folks, they are all bastardizing themselves. They're splitting themselves, they're coping, they're compromising their morals and their truth, truth-telling, their godliness. They're sacrificing all of this in the pursuit of money. And they're fooling themselves that the money will help them then become more godly. I don't know how that... If you're genuine about that, you can't honestly believe that. Money does not equate into godliness. Godliness equates into godliness. And these are two separate paths. I think a lot of people these days need to really take a step back and really realize... Well, let me say it this way. This distinction will become clearer and clearer as time moves on. We're already starting to come into a very clear dichotomy between these two. And so this story, this parable, will only become more and more relevant. Because what do you see in these days? You're seeing a corrupted structure, a worldly structure, based on money, based on greed, based on ungodliness and immorality. This is the predominant path. And people have been fooled into thinking that this path is synonymous with godliness, it's synonymous with fulfillment, when in reality it's not true. It's exactly the opposite. And if we contextualize this within American politics, I say it time and time again, there's a holy war going on. There's a war between God and the devil, as there always is. And then, more specifically, that's subcategorized into Muslims versus Judaism versus Christians. And it's not that those things are all mutually exclusive necessarily, but the conversation right now is not a conversation of I'm trying to figure out how to tackle this. It's just a big topic. The light which I think about it when I hear this right now is just about all the sellouts that are convincing themselves that they're not sellouts. And people need to be willing. People like Chris Langan or Nick Fuentes or anyone who's taking a hit financially to tell the truth, these people will be rewarded at the end of the day. Because it not only does it not do maximal good to sell yourself to the system in order to pretend that you're being more effective, but it's just the opposite. It's working for the opposing team. The Daily Wire guys are a great example of this. Matt Walsh is a Catholic. He knows what's up. He's a smart guy. He's written articles about the Jewish mafia. About 10 years ago, he wrote about it. Like, he knows what's going on. He works for Ben Shapiro. Like, there's no way he doesn't know what's going on. I'm sure he had to take his liberal European trip like everyone else in Con Inc. has to do. But what I would assume is happening with him is that he's convinced himself that he has a bigger platform so he can do more good than bad. When in reality, he's just helping propagate an evil system. You know, how do you deal with this though without purity spiraling? I don't know if anyone watching has an opinion or if there's something I can look at there, but like if you go off the Pharisee story with Jesus, it's like and this is a genuine question, right? What level of compromise is acceptable? And is it 0? I think it's pretty obvious that compromise as a cope has been abused. It's way out of hand right now. Most people are coping for the sake of comfortability. But does it have to be all or nothing? I don't know. I think it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but maybe it just probably has to be. It probably does have to be all or nothing in the fact that you can't willingly play along with something you know is evil for the promise of future greatness. You know? Because that is not benign. If you're ignorant in it, then there's no way to know. I guess that's not like morally wrong. But it's just an interesting topic. It's an interesting subject. I just thought that was so illuminating because our political landscape is full of this thing. And I guess the point at the end of the day I'm trying to make here is that like we need to be more godly. We need to be more pure, and we need to put our ideals higher than we need to put success, worldly success. So that's really at the end of the day what the message of today's show is that you need to assess your life, and you need to very honestly and objectively look at it and say, where am I coping? And what can I be doing to serve God more fully? If these are two separate paths, two separate towers, two separate cups, and you can only fill one at a time because they're dichotomous, then you need to pick very carefully which one you're going to fill at which point in time. Are you going to serve the world? Are you going to serve the devil? Or are you going to serve God? And that is not a question to take lightly. That is not something that just works itself out. I think Protestantism has done people a disservice in taking these things so lightly, saying that you just need to say these words and you're saved at the end of the day. I don't believe that to be the case, and I don't think that's taught either. Traditionally, I think you need to back up your actions. Your pursuit of godliness needs to be backed up by how you operate in this world. And you need to be very honest about that, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I don't know how you're going to get judged, but I can't imagine God's going to look at you and be like, well, you fooled yourself and ended up propagating a satanic political party. It's like, well, you didn't know any better. Like, I think people do know better, and they have the obligation to be honest with themselves about that. Yeah, the whole point of being alive is to become more Christ-like, to become more godly. And I'll try and pull out some other snippets from Chris Langan, CTMU, because it's really, really interesting. I think very possibly this could be, if Chris Langan, CTMU, is holistic, it could be the logical next step, if spoken about correctly, to reconvert people from atheistic, scientistic, materialistic ways back to God. I think that this could be a nice little on-ramp for people back into spirituality. It could be a spiritual technology, like there's technology and there's spirituality, right? These are another set of opposing pairs. And right now, I think it's pretty obvious our technology is way, way higher than our spirituality. And you can also think of that in the dichotomy of technology being worldly, being demonic, being evil, and God and spirituality and like morality and wisdom. So with the invention of AI, with the internet, with all these technological advances, when was the last spiritual advance that we've had as a culture, as a globe, as a world? It's long overdue. And I think something like this could be a nice fit, a nice on-ramp to pushing humanity towards another spiritual step on our journey. Because it branches off of the technological steps that we've made. It doesn't try and build up from something that people think is dubious. It's not dubious, obviously, but people think that it is, so it's hard for them to grasp. So, I don't know. The grander point here, I'm not trying to ramble or anything, but like I said, the takeaway here is, one, try and take in biblical stories, try and take in moral truths and recontextualize them within the modern day. Because there's a lot of wisdom, and it's very esoteric. It's hard for people to unpack these things sometimes. So when they can be unpacked in a way that's relatable, that's incredibly valuable. And the other thing is to watch out for people who are fooling themselves and in turn fooling you, that it's not a greater good. It's not a greater good to serve the wrong master. You know, that's a little mind game, and people fall into that all the time because that's one of the ways that you get got. It's not how it works. You can't start in one structure and easily gap over to the other structure. You can't start by building wealth and then gap over to being an aesthete. You know? I mean, that's even biblical. It's like you need to renounce all your worldly possessions and follow God. That's no uncertain terms. It's not. God's not saying, yeah, okay, you guys need to become billionaires. All of you need to become billionaires, and then you can help. Then you can help serve me. No, God's like, sell everything that you have and serve me. They're mutually exclusive. One does not have anything to do with the other. And if you think that one does, then you need to take a step back, and you need to realize where you're getting fooled. So, this is what I've been thinking about lately. Chris Langan's an interesting dude, and Chris Langan himself has dealt with the repercussions of being a godly man. He's completely ousted from academia because of his conspiracy theories, or because of his spiritual ideas, because of him trying to incorporate godliness within a physical structure, to incorporate metaphysics into his models. You can tell who's in charge by who's getting persecuted, you know? And this is why I trust people who have been canceled. It really doesn't matter what for, unless it's like pedophilia or something, right? Like some people are canceled for the right reasons, I suppose, but unfortunately, most people who are canceled these days are canceled for being for being moral and godly in a world that's not moral or godly. So, just some stuff to think about. Think about how it's affecting your life. Think about something that you can do to shift this dynamic a little bit. Think about the fact that you could die tomorrow. And if you're Matt Walsh and you're saying like, oh, well, I'm just going to stack up as much money as possible, and you die tomorrow and you haven't hit your ineffable, billionaire goal or whatever, It's like, okay, what happens then? Well, you just spent your entire life serving the devil. What do you think's going to happen when you die? And you get up to the pearly gates and you're like, well, God, I was going to do that. And God's like, didn't you read the Bible? Like, didn't I tell you to not care about worldly possessions and just follow me? Like, how clear do I have to be? I don't buy that someone like that, if they get run over by a bus or whatever. Like, if you want to take that gamble and you want to, if you want to take that gamble that you might die tomorrow, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. Nah, you don't take that gamble. I'll just say that right now. Serve God right now. Do it. They're exclusive. If you think that serving money is serving God, then you're wrong, and you're going to have a bad time. Things aren't going to work out great. So, just think about it. And this is the type of thing also that, like, if this became the prevailing wisdom, things would be a lot better. Imagine if everyone was out there telling the truth. Genuinely telling the truth, not in hopes of making money, but telling the truth to people. Following God. If everyone was doing that, or even 50% more, or 20%, 10% more, people were doing that instead of trying to make their bag and then turn that into godliness. It's like, well, we would have already got there. You know? The only reason we're not more godly is because everyone's trying to get the bag before they turn godly or something. I mean, I don't get... It doesn't make sense. I understand the thought process because it's very tricky. It's very entrapping. And that's how the devil works, but... Wake up. Wake up. Go out there and tell the truth. Call what you see. Do it. If everyone was doing that, we'd be a lot better. Everything would be a lot better. So, anyways, that's today's show. I'm going to cut it there. I just wanted to go over that little nugget. For anyone who wants to watch this entire Chris Langan interview, I highly recommend it. It's on there's a YouTube channel called Theories of Everything with Kurt Yamingal? Man, how do you say that? Curjaimun Yamingal. Yaimungal. Fuck, man, I don't know. It's an Indian name, I believe. Anyways, check this out. It's worth the listen if you can make it through. The first hour is pretty dense. I would say we're this peak here, this 2-hour peak. That's probably when things start to get a little bit like more colloquial. This first hour or two is like, it's a lot. I had to look up a lot of words. It makes sense when you grok it all, but it's not easy. Cool. That's it. That's all. We'll be back tomorrow, probably with some more news, some less philosophy, but the philosophy is always good. It's always something good to think about. And I wish that more people would think about things like this, because there's just a lot of blind mice running around, you know? That's what it feels like anyways. So, that's it. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Appreciate you, wife. Appreciate you, Young. Anyone else who's watching right now, thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. PST. If you're interested in Parallel, want to check out any crypto stuff, check out the Game Seller video on Slum TV. And have a good night. Peace.
Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.